Long, long ago, before the peopling of the stars, a group of spacefarers set sail from old Earth, never to return again. And their destination was another pale blue dot, which they named Ostara after an ancient spring goddess. And indeed, they hoped that this world would prove to be an Eden of sorts, with plentiful water and fertile soil. Truly a blank slate where they could start anew and lead lives of peace and plenty, far from the myriad problems of their home world. But, of course, the planet was already inhabited. Sure, it was inhabited by dumb, slow creatures which were hardly aware of their own existence, but empty it was not. Along the ocean floor, large microbial mats served as food, anchor and shelter for all sorts of animals. There were grazers, fronds, free-swimming herbivores, and even one or two predators, though none larger than the length of one's arm. Meanwhile, closer to the surface, there were blooms of floating algae. Fed by massive sediment flows coming in from the bare continents, they grew in such numbers that they turned entire patches of ocean yellow, with yellow having long been the color of choice for Ostara's native plants. And then this formed the basis of an ecosystem dominated by creatures that very distantly resemble the fish of old Earth. Granted, they were jawless, boneless and full of air, but they sort of looked like fish from a distance. Furthermore, these creatures only spent a small fraction of their life cycle up near the surface. Indeed, they were born on the ocean floor and spent their larval stage anchored to the mats, only floating away after undergoing their first metamorphosis. And then, eventually, they underwent a second metamorphosis. Their digestive tract closed, the air pockets that kept them afloat deflated, and they sank back to the bottom of the ocean to reproduce and die en masse. While this may all seem rather primitive, it was a fully functional and surprisingly diverse biosphere, even if it was largely confined to the planet's oceans and rivers. And, in fact, it was about as old as Earth's own biosphere, with both planets having formed at roughly the same time. But, sadly, the new arrivals didn't quite see it that way. They had spent the past 2,000 years sailing the stars, and they weren't going to turn back out of respect for these alien jellyfish, as they call them. And so, after landing, they started doing what their ancestors had taught them. Slowly but surely, they started to build the soil on which their new fields and forests would soon grow, bringing life to a landmass that had till then been bare. And this, even if indirectly, marked the beginning of the end for Ostara's native biosphere. Sure, they weren't actively killing anything yet, but all these new plants and their roots ensured that the topsoil would stay put instead of washing away into the ocean. Thus the algae, and by extension everything that fed on them, were starved of their nutrients and died. And so died the predators, and so died the deep-sea scavengers that fed on the corpses of those fish. But that would not be the end of it. Indeed, shortly after this, they also started introducing their own Earth life into Ostara's oceans. And so, what little remained of the old blooms, starved and scattered, was outcompeted by Earth algae and plankton, which worked much better with the reduced nutrients of the new ocean. And there was more to come still. Not content with this, the colonists soon started tearing into the mats themselves, clearing them away to make room for their own kelp and fish and such creatures. And, with the floor quite literally ripped from under them, that ecosystem collapsed too. Thus, in the span of barely 100 years, Ostara went from having a thriving native biosphere to being overrun with alien life.